Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Student Pilot. What I would like to do today is to show you a full step-by-step process of what we have to do before we take any flight. Before departure, we always have to do a complete and thorough pre-flight of the airplane. What I'm going to be using is a Microsoft Flight Simulator with an A2A plugin of a Cessna 172. The reason I like to use A2A Cessna 172 plugin is because it has a very thorough step-by-step pre-flight process of the airplane. It also has a very realistic view of the airplane with all the switches and buttons working exactly as they would on a real airplane. So the process that you will see is as follows. I will pre-flight an airplane. We will depart Albridge Airport. This is where my flight school is. We will fly to Monmouth Executive Airport. We will do a couple of touch and goes, and we will fly back to Albridge Airport. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight. Now, before I begin a pre-flight, just wanted to make a quick note that this is one of the newer 172s. So it's a fuel-injected engine, not a carb engine. So there is no carb heat here. There's also a pitot heat feature, pitot heat step that you have to do that you don't have to do on some of the older 172s. Okay, so let's begin. Pilot operating handbook is in. Weights and balances checked. Parking brake set and hold. Control wheel lock removed. Ignition switch is off. Avionics master switch is off. Battery master switch on. Pitot heat, let's turn that on. Let's check the fuel quantity, and I did fill it up right before I started the sim, so we're completely full. Alright, avionics master switch on. Everything looks good. Everything's coming up, radios are on. Static pressure, old source off. Annunciator panel, let's test that. All the lights are on. As soon as I release it, only the ones that's supposed to stay on are on. All the light switches are off. Fuel selector on both. Fuel shut-off valve on. Flaps extended. Okay, let's check, make sure they are coming down. They are coming down. And they're down. Excellent. Let's turn the pitot heat off. And avionics master switch off. Battery master switch off. And elevator trim is set for takeoff. We are done inside. Let's go outside. Right, we always start on the left wing. So we are going to remove the pitot cover. Let's check the baggage door, make sure it's locked. Alright, and it is. Let's check the fuselage. Make sure everything looks good. Moving on to the tail section. We're going to remove the tie downs. Check the control surfaces and make sure all the pins are in place. Check the rudder section, same thing. Make sure all the controls all properly secured. Make sure all the pins are in, quarter pins are in, and nothing is missing. And then we're going to check the trim tab, just very lightly so you don't break it off. Moving on to the right wing, we're going to check the flaps by moving up and down. We're going again check there, make sure there's not too much play, and make sure everything's in place. Make sure all the pins are in place, nothing's missing. Now we're going to check ailerons. Again, we check for proper movement of the ailerons as well as the condition of the ailerons themselves, and make sure all the pins and all the nuts and bolts are in place. We're also going to check wingtips and lights conditions, make sure the lights are not broken. Next we're going to disconnect the wing tie down, and we're going to check the leading edge. Next we're going to check the main wheel and tire. We're going to check for the condition of the tire, make sure there's no punctures, make sure there's plenty of tread left on the tire. We're going to check for the hydraulic fluid leakage on the wheel and on the ground, and we're going to remove the wheel locks. Next we're going to drain some fuel from the tank sump and inspect the fuel for contamination, and if there's any water in the fuel, it would be flowing at the top, so we would dispose of it and check it again, make sure the fuel is nice and clean. Now, moving on to the top of the right wing, we actually have to visually inspect the quantities of the fuel. We obviously checked the quantity of fuel inside using the gauges, but we do have to check it visually to make sure, to basically just double checking ourselves if there's any problems with the fuel gauges and they're lying. You want to see, make sure there's actual fuel in your tanks. All right. Next we're moving to the nose of the airplane. We're going to check the engine oil using the dipstick. Moving on, we're going to drain some fuel and inspect it from the fuel strainer using a quick drain valve. We're also going to check the nose wheel and tire for the proper inflation and proper strut extension. Make sure at least 2 fingers need to fit in between the strut, and if it's too low, then obviously you got to remedy the situation. Now we're just visually going to inspect the nose of the plane, make sure there's no damages, everything looks good and secure. Next up we're going to check the engine cooling inlets, make sure there's no birds nests in there, nothing else got inside. We're also going to check the air filter, make sure there's no restrictions or any debris. Moving on to the left side of the airplane, we are going to check a left static source opening, make sure there's no blockages. Now going to the left wing, to the top of the wing again, we're going to check fuel quantity visually to make sure the gauges weren't lying to you. And same procedure on the left wing. We're going to drain some fuel from the tank sump and inspect it to make sure it's not contaminated with debris or water. We're also going to inspect the pitot tube. Next up, left main wheel and tire. Same thing, we're checking, make sure the tire looks good, there's no punctures, make sure it's inflated, make sure there's no hydraulic fluid leakage on the wheel on the ground, and we're going to remove wheel chokes. Moving on to the left wing, we're going to check the fuel tank vent opening. It's right over here. Make sure there's no blockages. Check the stall warning horn. That's right here, and we just want to make sure there's no blockage. You can if you get some suction in it, you can hear a stall horn go off. That's kind of how you can check it. We are going to remove the tie down, inspect landing lights and taxi lights, make sure there's no damages, and inspect the leading edge of the wing. And then we're going to check the ailerons. Again, proper movement of the ailerons, make sure all the pins, nuts and bolts are in place, and inspect the wingtip and lights, make sure nothing's broken, everything's working. Moving on to the back of the left wing, we're going to check the flaps for the proper movement, make sure there's not too much play, make sure again all the pins are in place and everything looks secure. And that concludes our pre-flight of the airplane. So let's move on to the next step and let's start the engine. Now before starting the engine, we have to go through a checklist. Fuel selector in both. Engine throttle cracked. Mixture lean. Master switch on. Beacon light is on. That lets everyone around know that we're about to start the engine. On this airplane we have to prime the fuel pump. So turn the fuel pump on and we're advancing the mixture and we're watching for the fuel flow to start building pressure. Once we see that, we'll pull the mixture back and we turn off the fuel pump. It's only about 5 seconds or so. Alright. Now we correct the throttle a little bit. We yell out of the window, "Clear prop." Again, to let everybody know not to stay around because we're going to start the engine. And we're going to turn on the ignition switch and advance mixture. We're going to advance it to about 1,000 RPMs. And we're going to lean it just slightly since we're on the ground before taxiing so we don't foul the plugs. Okay. And now we're going to turn, well it's daytime, we really don't need many lights, but we're going to turn on a taxi lights on and net lights. And turn the avionics master switch on. While we're waiting for the engine to warm up, we're going to set and check our ATIS to check the weather, the winds. Before any departure, you should always check your weather conditions for your departure airport and your destination airport. Okay, now I checked the ATIS and it looks like the wind is at 12 knots from 270, so the best runway for us to take is 24. So we're going to slowly start taxiing to that runway. Release the brakes, check the brakes, make sure everything looks good. Alright. There's one step that I did forget. We have to retract our flaps before we go. Slowly advancing the throttle. Albert traffic Skyhawk taxiing to runway 24. It is always a very good idea to check the SOC just to confirm what you heard in ATIS is correct too. So, and it is. We're going to get to the end of the taxiway and we're going to do our run-up. Okay. Alright, so for the run-up, again, we have to go through a list of steps. Checking our seat belts, harnesses, make sure doors are locked, windows are locked. I'm going to lock my window. Alright. Check our flight instruments. On the simulator, I actually like to do it from the outside, so I'm going to get behind and check our ailerons up, down, elevator up, down, and rudder left, right. Okay, everything looks good. Get back inside, and let's check our magnetos. Before we do that, fuel selector on both, mixture full rich, locked, and increase the throttle to 1800 RPMs. Alright. Check right magneto. There's a drop and it looks like our plugs are fouled, so we have to clear them. Back to both, and the right magneto also fouled. So we're going to lean our mixture a little bit, and we're going to give it full throttle and hold it for about 30 seconds or so. And we're going to actually watch our manifold. We're going to go watch the EGTs rise up and burn off some of that gunk off of spark plugs. We can also monitor the RPM gauge. Once it stabilizes, it's probably ready to go, as well as EGT. EGT is rising. All the gauges are in the green. Want to check temperature, pressure, oil, and vacuum, of course. Alright, let's try it again. Throttle it back. Mixture full rich, 1800 RPMs. And check right mag. Much better. Back to both. Left mag, looks great. Back to both. In the carbureted engine, we would actually pull a carb heat first, also to check for the drop, and bring it back and see the RPMs go back up. Alright, so everything looks good. We're going to announce our departure. Oldbridge traffic, Skyhawk departing runway 24 with southeast departure, Oldbridge. I'm going to line up in the center of the runway. I like to do a full stop. Check the DG with the compass, make sure it looks good, and it is 240. And we're also going to check our altimeter, and everything looks good. So here we go. Again, I very quickly like to just do a quick check. Fuel selector both. Flaps are up, mixture full rich, trim set, everything looks good, all the gauges are in the green, keels to the floor, full power. Holding a little bit of right rudder as we're departing. Airspeed's alive, gauges in the green, and there's 60, rotate, and holding the right rudder. Keeping that ball in the center, staying coordinated. Perfect climb, about 80 knots. Don't forget that the wind is slightly from 270 to about 12, so we have a small crab going into the wind. We're going to climb to about 1,000 feet. And then we're going to turn to 150 and fly to KBLM, Monmouth Executive. Trim it down a little bit. Alright, there's 1,000. And we're returning to 150. Check for traffic, and of course, check your gauges once in a while, scan them, your speed. There's 150, we're going to roll out. Nice straight and level, continue to climb. Since we're climbing again, you have to compensate for that P factor, and hold a little bit of right rudder. Keep flying your heading. We're going to climb to about 2,500 feet and level off, since it's a very short flight, so we don't need to go that much higher. Okay. climb at about 1,000 feet per minute, about 80 knots. Trim it down a little bit because it's one thing to climb. Now in the actual Cessna I would have a trim wheel here, but I have an electrical trim set on my yoke, so that's what I'm doing. And there's our 2500, pushing on the nose down, pulling the throttle back a little bit. I like to hold it about between 22 to 2400 RPMs. So one of the checkpoints that, as I fly to Monmouth Executive, there is a pond straight ahead of us at 150, so that's my guiding point. Since as a private pilot you have to practice dead reckoning, which is basically you have to navigate by visual cue points, hence the VFR visual flight rules, and have to try and practice as much as possible without relying on your navigation aids, because as I do take my check ride, there will be a situation where an examiner will turn everything off instead and will basically say that your electronics failed, and basically get me to the specific destination. Tell me where you are, tell me where you're going, and how you're going to get there. So I can already see the airport. Airport's right over here. I can also start descent right now. So I'm going to pull the power to about 2,000, not to get too much below 2,000, so I don't have to worry about putting car key on yet. So just slowing down, pitching down to about 300 feet per minute or so. 300 to 500 is fine. Now, obviously, at this point, I would have already tuned my radio to Monmouth Executive CTAF, and I would announce my inbound to the airport. So, Monmouth traffic, Skyhawk inbound for touch and goes, about 3 miles out. Northwest Monmouth. It's very important to note how important the trim is. If your airplane does not have an autopilot, it's basically a cheap man's autopilot. You can call it, and many people do. If your airplane is properly trimmed, you can just fly it with 2 fingers and not worry about putting too much pressure on your yoke, pushing on it, pulling on it. It can get very tiring very quickly. Alright, well, here's our pattern altitude. We're getting close to 1,200 feet, so I'm going to level out. Monmouth traffic, Skyhawk entering left downwind, runway 32, Monmouth. There's midfield, pulling power back, park it in, holding nose back. Holding those up. There's wide arc, 10 degrees of flips. Power back in. Pushing on the yoke. Almost at 45 degrees to the runway. I'm going to start making our call to base. Monmouth traffic, Skyhawk turning left, base, runway 32 Monmouth. Flaps, more. Light slow. And Monmouth traffic, Skyhawk turning final, runway 32 Monmouth. Looking good. Right and glide slow. 70 knots. Speed looking good. Rate of descent looking good. 10 degrees of flaps. So what we're going to do right now is something that we call touch and goes, which is where we land but we don't do a full stop. We roll, we clean up the airplane, we take off again, we fly a pattern. We're going to do one more touch and go and go back to Old Bridge. Keep flying towards the numbers. Keeping the airplane right in the center. And back to idle. Keep flying the airplane. Alright. Level off. Nose up. To the left. Didn't do enough crosswind correction. Anyway, flex up, up heading, keep in, retrim, trim set, heels to the floor, full power. Gauges on the green. Airplane's alive. 60, rotate, holding the right rudder. Traffic, Skyhawk turning left, crosswind, runway 32 Monmouth. There's 1,000 feet. Check the runway. Good. Leveling off. Traffic, Skyhawk turning. left downwind, runway 32 Monmouth. Approaching midfield. Start getting things under control. Alright, carb heat in, power back. Holding the nose up. Hold it up. White arc, 10 degrees of flaps. Power back. Okay. Monmouth traffic, Skyhawk turning left, base, runway 32 Monmouth. Traffic Skyhawk turning final, runway 32 Monmouth. Here we are. We're in the glide slope. Let's get another 10 degrees of flaps. Back to about 1500 RPMs, about 70 knots, between 65 to 70. It's a little windy today, so 70 is looking good. There we go. There's the gust. Back on the glide slope. And back to idle. Hands up. Up, carb heat in. Trim set. Full power. On the traffic, Skyhawk departing runway 32 with northwest departure. And there's 60. Rotate. And of course, always remember, keep checking outside for any animal traffic. I'm going to fast forward a little bit ahead, so you don't have to watch this boring stuff. Alright, there's the airport. We're at pattern altitude. We're gonna make a call. Over traffic Skyhawk entering crosswind, right crosswind, runway 24 Old Bridge. We'll fly in the field. Ooh, nice gust. Over traffic Skyhawk turning right downwind, runway 24 Old Bridge. Now remember, we have a wind from 270, so it's going to push us towards the runway, so we're flying slightly to the left. Okay. Midfield, power back, park heat in, nose up. There's weather, 10 degrees of flips, power back in, nose down. Old Bridge traffic Skyhawk turning right, base runway to Old Bridge. Back out. 10 degrees of flaps. And Old Bridge traffic Skyhawk turning right, turning final, runway 24 Old Bridge. Actually turned a little bit earlier because again, that crosswind, so it's going to keep pushing us to the left. So as it keeps pushing us, we're going to correct and line up properly with the runway. Power back, 10 degrees flaps. Slow this thing down a little bit. There we go. And we can go back to idle. Correcting for crosswind. And we're going to take this exit. Traffic Skyhawk clear, runway 24 Old Bridge, taxiing back to flight school. Make a momentary stop, clean up the airplane, carb heat in, flaps up, and trim set. Let's taxi back. Lean out the mixture a little bit while we're on the ground, taxiing. Again, not to foul the spark plugs. full stop. And typically we pull out a checklist and we go through a shutdown procedure, but since I don't have one in front of me right now, basically what we do is pull power back, avionic master switch off, mixture lean, and ignition switch off, all the lights are off, and that's it.